In this video, I'm going to share the 5 books that helped me start my writing career. Now, before we go much further, I just want to be clear. I am not a best-selling author. I've never been traditionally published. I've only done self-publishing, but it did, and it has paid the bills, or at least some of our bills. And and I know that I am still very new to it. I mean, I published my first real book back in 2018, so 6 years ago. And I've been writing fairly consistency, though I do sometimes kind of not write for a while. But I really do enjoy writing, and these books really have helped me to learn the process of writing, but more importantly, kind of the mental game that is trying to be a writer. So the first book that really helped me was The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I heard about this book in so many different places, on so many different podcasts, and I just heard it like over and over and over again. I thought, I've got to read this book. Like, what? Like, there's got to be something to it. And it was life-changing in a lot of different ways. First of all, I read this because I wanted to be a painter. I wanted to like draw and paint and sell art in that kind of way. And in the book, she talks about that, yes, but she also talks a lot about writing. And it was funny because I was thinking to myself, well, I don't want to be a writer, so that doesn't really apply to me. But then as I started to read the book more, I was like, actually, I used to really want to be a writer. Like that was like my childhood dream. And in the book, she gives you exercises to kind of like understand, like maybe that, you're a creative person, but why are you not creating? Like what's going on? And I learned by doing these exercises. I wrote the morning pages like she told me to write, and I did the stuff. I just did the work. It really showed me so many things about my childhood. Like, oh yeah, that's why I quit writing, because I didn't believe that I could write, because that was just a thing that I was told by a couple of people that were, or at least it was to my kid brain, that's what was being said, even though probably it's worse in my head than it actually was in real life. But the point is, that doesn't even matter. What matters is how you remember things. And she also talks about this kind of like voice in your head that can really discourage you as a creative, and how to get around that. So this book actually was life-changing, and it did lead to my writing career because because of this book. It's kind of a long story, but we ended up going off on a 2-year adventure of just full-time RVing, traveling around the country with our kids in a classy RV. And it was during that time that I actually wrote my first book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting. And also my husband wrote his first book as well. So this book is a great one. I highly, highly recommend it. The next book that was really helpful was, and I don't have a physical copy of it, and I really regret that I don't have a physical copy. It's called The War of Art, and it's by Steven Pressfield. And this book, again, game changer. And I wish I had a physical copy because, like I was mentioning, sometimes I don't write, I don't do the work. And this book is the thing that will get you to create and kind of get you to stop, whining and letting your emotions kind of control you, and actually just sit down and write. And he talks a lot about resistance. That's the thing that will stand between you and your writing. Like, you have to fight it. It is like a force. I mean, he even says, he believes in God, and he thinks of resistance as evil. Like, you have to fight evil in order to get yourself to the page, to actually write things down. And since learning about that, first of all, I have seen how true it is in my own life, how so many little things, when I decide I'm going to write, can just crop up. And it's like, oh, well, but you got to do this and this and this first, and then you can write. But if you do that, you never write. And I also heard a great story at one point, I can't remember if it's in the book, about Ayn Rand. And she wrote Atlas Shrugged and a lot of other great books. But she talked about how her tennis shoes had never been wider than when she was trying to write. Because what would happen is like, she would be sitting down to write and then she would see her shoes. It's like, oh, they've got a little smudge. So she'd go clean the smudge. And before she knew it, her shoes were just completely white, because that is resistance. It is all these little distractions that will make it so that you don't write. The next book is this one right here, Stephen King's On Writing. It is fantastic. I love Stephen King. Like I loved watching his movies, like in the 90s. Specifically, The Stand was always one of my favorites. I've read some of his books, but man, they're rough. They are. Some of the stuff is like super disturbing. It can be very violent, a lot of sexual content sometimes, a lot of language, like really rough language. And this book like has some rough language in it. But it is about his life and how he became a writer and the work that he put into it and continues to put into it. And he's a very encouraging guy, like, which is funny because you would think, oh, well, he's like this scary guy because he writes about these really disturbing things, but he's very encouraging and he makes you feel like you can do this. Like you just have to sit down and you have to do the work. And it's a great book. It's so fantastic. One little thing that was really helpful to me is he talks about the scariest part of writing is just before you start. Like, so in other words, you're going to feel this fear. It's the same thing. It's the resistance. It's the censor that Julia Cameron talks about. It's just like there is this scary thing that you have to face when you sit down and try to write. And it's just a great book. I loved reading it. He talks about being poor and trying to, be a writer at the same time. And it was just like he struggled a lot. And then he became wildly successful. But really my absolute favorite part of this book is in the very end when he talks about the accident that he had. And it's just fantastic. Brought me to tears. Like it's just a really good book. It's one that I've read multiple times, that I refer back to a lot. I've like underlined things in it. And it's one of those that I really want to like reread every year just to remind myself of things. Which brings me to a book that he recommends that every writer read and just kind of always keep handy. And it's The Elements of Style by William Strunk and E.B. White, which E.B. White was one of my favorite authors when I was a kid, specifically Charlotte's Web. I loved that book. And so this book, like it's really more of a technical kind of like grammar rules. Here are some, ways to use the parentheses like correctly. There's a lot in this book that is what you might think of as kind of dry. But the thing that was actually the most encouraging to me was the foreword. And the foreword was written by E.B. White's stepson. And he talked about watching, E.B. White when he would write and how he would like never be satisfied. Like he would have these deadlines and he would like work really, really hard on the piece of writing he was doing, but he was never satisfied. He always felt like he could have done just a little bit better on it before the deadline ended. And so that has been really helpful to me because one of the things when I'm trying to write is like, I always feel like, but it could be better. That could be better. And you have to learn at some point, like it could always be better. Like you have to, at some point say, okay, even E.B. White knew that it could be better and he just had to stop. So it's really an encouraging kind of book, really a great reference too. The last book is Ray Bradbury's Zen and the Art of Writing. And I love Ray Bradbury. He's like one of my favorite authors. He was not somebody I really knew when I was a kid or a teenager or even, just until a few years ago, really, I started to read what he had written. And it's like every time I read a Ray Bradbury book, it's like, I need to read everything this man ever wrote because I just enjoy it so much. Like Fahrenheit 451, that's one of his more well-known ones, obviously, but Dandelion Wine, Something Wicked This Way Comes, like The Martian Chronicles. Every time I read one, I'm like, I need to read more of him. And so this book, a fellow creative actually lent it to me. So I don't have a physical copy and I regret that I have not yet picked one up because it is so good. There are lots of little stories from his own life about how he became a writer, just kind of the process, his philosophy on writing, and like, you know, what he thinks. And he talks about the importance of enthusiasm in your writing. And that has been really helpful because when you're kind of a new writer, you're doubtful. I mean, every writer, I think, based on, you know, I'm very fascinated by reading about writers about writing. And it seems like a common theme that no writer is ever really, really confident about their writing. They are sensitive creatures, and they have a lot of self-doubt. And so when he talks about enthusiasm, like just like, you know, using your emotions and putting that on paper, you know, using your life and then putting that down in a story, that was really helpful to me. It encourages me, I think, to be a bit bolder than I would otherwise feel confident in being. He talks about, for example, in his own life, he got really annoyed because one day he was out for a walk at night, just to think, like he just wanted to think, and he was out walking and these cops harassed him just for being out and about at a late hour. And so he took that annoyance and kind of anger, and he wrote The Pedestrian, which eventually turned into Fahrenheit 451. So that was really encouraging to see, like, you know, you can take these things that annoy you or that make you angry, and you can turn it into something really good, like a best-selling book. So yeah, it's a great book. I really love it. It was very helpful to me. So those are the books that have really helped me the most when it comes to actually writing. But I'm sure there are some out there that I've not heard of or that I've forgotten about. So in the comment section, if there's one that you think I should read, please let me know. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.
Allie McGee comes home from school one day to find that her little brother Pete is gone. She remembers the imaginative stories he told about a magical tree in the forsaken forest, and she immediately sets out into the woods behind her house to find him. She begins to realize his stories were true when she finds the enchanted tree and is transported to a different world, only to discover that Pete's been kidnapped by the wicked King Olshek. She must go on a dangerous journey to the land of Hinnom to get to the castle where her brother is being held captive. Will Allie be able to save her brother? Or will she too be taken prisoner in Olshek's castle?